One of the questions that we think about a lot here at Daggerfinn is how do you unlock full participation of the labor force such that we can close the gap between the number of open jobs available in the US economy and the unemployment rate. And in thinking about that, of course, we look at the different age cohorts and see which parts of the ladder, so to speak, are participating higher or lower than they were pre-COVID. And in diving into that, I think there's an interesting trend that those of us in HR and marketing or in talent acquisition or employer brand need to be aware of when it comes to really unlocking the full kind of potential of the labor force. And it's really that while certain or most of the age groups in the labor force are starting to come back to work, since the height of the pandemic in 2020, one part of the cohort or one cohort as part of the entire population that isn't returning is those aged 55 or older. So those that are nearing retirement age and who, as a function of the pandemic, have said, you know what, I don't need to go back to work. I don't want to go back to work. I think one of the big trends that you hear a lot about is people being tired and saying, you know what, I just don't feel like I need to go back for these final couple of years that we would have worked before retiring. And so they're pulling forward their retirement age to where they are right now and then seeing if their finances last that long. So to dive into the numbers a little bit, just to make the point a little bit clearer. So younger workers who left the workforce as a function of the pandemic, so workers in their prime working years, 25 to 54, the labor participation rate is at 81.6% today. And that's up a couple percentage points from where it was at the height of COVID. So it was, at the high 70, 79, 78%. And what you're finding is that, when you see the chart here of the trend of people retiring, you see a sharp uptick in the year 2020 where something like 1.5 million workers have 1.5 million more workers at the age of 55 and up have retired than would have, according to that upward trend that was happening anyway. So there's a gap there that you can start to see. So between the 10.5 or 10 million open jobs that we have in the economy right now, just being able to pull back into the workforce this 1.5 million people that left early would bring that open job count down significantly, down into the 8 millions. And I think that would really start to help a lot of the labor shortage and the dynamics or the ramifications or the implications of the labor shortage, the lack of fluidity or the lack of liquidity in the labor markets, just by having these individuals come back to work. And so that, of course, kind of extrapolates out to the next point, which we think about here at Daggerfinn, which is tactically, how do you do this? What's the play? And the first step in thinking about that, of course, is to tap into the psychology of those 55 and older and say, well, what do these individuals want in a work relationship? What do they want from a company that would make them come back? And so when you're nearing, I would say you could separate that cohort into two. There's the individuals who are risk averse. They've spent their entire working lives working and they're risk averse. And so they're looking for an opportunity where, can they maximize their 401k? Can they get the most match out of their employer? Can they balance as high a salary as possible with benefits such that they can kind of ease into the retirement, knowing that they're maximizing their earnings potential over these last, couple of years? And then third, is there a chance for them to just kind of make retirement easy in that there's no risk? So their employer isn't gonna, go about with a big bunch of layoffs, and because they're gonna last in, they'd be the first out kind of thing. So you've got three dynamics there with one cohort, and then you could separate out the other cohort, which would be those who have made enough money over their career such that they're satisfied or they're content with their financial security, and then they're going to go and do something risk on. So go start or go find a startup that's exciting. Go do something completely new. Take all the kind of risks that you typically associate with someone in their early 20s or mid 20s, and work the last few years of their career in that very exciting kind of startup environment. And who knows, maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, they can get a massive exit. And so when you think about those two cohorts and trying to appeal to those, then you pull it back to, well, your organization. And tactically, what kind of individual are you trying to attract? That this 1.5 million people in the 55 plus group is a great opportunity to unlock experienced talent that is on the fence and whether they want to work or not want to work, and it really is on the companies then to unlock this talent pool. And so if your company is the kind that where you could really tap into some experienced professionals, well, it's a good idea to go and figure out which of these two cohorts do you want to appeal to, which is more conducive to the workforce that you have currently, because you've got to think about the blend in your current workforce, and then if you were able to bring in individuals from this 55 plus cohort, what that would look like culturally. But which do you appeal to? Do you offer individuals that safety and risk off environment, or do you go hard into the risk on environment and say, okay, well, that's who we are and that's who we want to attract? But basically thinking about those two cohorts and then extrapolating down to you, thinking about what benefits and culture and dynamics you have at play. I think that it's just a really interesting place to play from an employer brand standpoint, and a real unlock, I think, if companies can start to tap into this pool, bring them back to the labor force, and see if we can really unlock the full potential of the entire economy going forward.